And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. AOC breaks the internet. Robinhood stops letting people trade. We're going to hopefully raise the minimum wage. We're going to expand healthcare. We're going to help people out. We're going to make a better tomorrow. We're going to rebuild this country. We're going to move things in a good direction. And as Mitch McConnell was trying to get across, Joe Biden's basically undoing every bit of damage that Donald Trump did, and that's a good thing. But I got to start with I was reading all about this GameStop story, which has been fantastic. And for those who don't know, for the last couple of weeks, GameStop's stock has been going just crazy. It was, a couple of bucks, and then up over 400 within a very short period of time. And it's because you got these people on Reddit who really, just ramped it up. And watching the story kind of unfold has been kind of interesting to me. Because now you've got these platforms like Robinhood and TD America Trade now stopping the ability to sell this stuff or to transact in this stuff, and it's kind of got this bad taste because, well, isn't this the free market? Isn't this what can happen when you put everything into Wall Street? Because look, here's the sad reality. This is really one of those moments where you go, why I don't put a lot of credence in everyone pointing to the stock market's doing great, so the economy has to be doing great. That's not even remotely close to reality. And this GameStop story is a perfect example of it. GameStop, it was trading like over $400 at one point. So you would think GameStop has got to be just lighting the world on fire, when the reality is, sadly, they're probably going to be out of business in a couple of years. If not sooner, because they're still a brick and mortar model store and everything's done online. In fact, when I went to GameStop before Christmas to buy my kid his Xbox, they ordered it from Amazon. So the kid got online. He goes, "Oh, okay, we'll get it from our distribution center, and they'll ship it directly to you." It came from an Amazon distribution center. I've been there a bunch of times. I knew now, granted, it took like 2 weeks to get from where it was to my house, which I could have walked there and back and gotten it. But this is the problem that GameStop's got, because they're in the transition. And most of the games that they do sell, you can get through the online, cards and all that stuff, that you don't have to spend a lot of money buying them. You could rent them for a couple of months, and it's it's the new model. It's kind of like Microsoft did with Word. It's kind of like Adobe did with their suite. You can never again buy it. You have to continually lease it and rent it from them. So they have continued revenue coming in, so they can fleece you down the road. Whereas, 25 years ago, you bought the disc, you put it in, and it ran off the disc. And it was yours. And as long as you could put it on that computer, and as long as that computer would work, it worked. There weren't 1,000 bugs. There wasn't constant updating. It just was what it was. So, I'm looking at this and I'm going, I'm hoping, I'm hoping this is like one of those wake ups as you go, we've created a bubble on Wall Street. And I think you look at it and you go, giant bubble of rich people going, hey, things are great. We're going to keep deregulating. And at some point the bubble goes pop. Which means a massive correction. And that's coming, and that's because, well, you had drunken sailors the last 4 years spending out of control. Now, AOC, I got to give her credit. I love AOC. I'll be the first one to admit it. She's smart, and she doesn't take anything from anyone. And that's, again, one of those things I really like about her. So, Ted Cruz, she had said that there should be, an investigation. We should check into this. And Ted Cruz goes, "Yeah, I agree." And she lost her mind, which she should. She tweeted back, "I'm happy to work with Republicans on this issue where there's common ground, but you almost had me murdered 3 weeks ago, so you can sit this one out," she said. "Happy to work with almost any other GOP that aren't trying to get me killed. In the meantime, if you want to help, you can resign." She goes on to tweet, "While you conveniently talk about moving on, a second Capitol Police officer lost their life yesterday in the still raging aftermath of the attacks you had a role in." She says, "This isn't a joke. We need accountability, and that includes a new senator from Texas." She again goes on, "You haven't even apologized for the serious physical and mental harm you contributed to from the Capitol Police and custodial workers to your own fellow members of Congress. In the meantime, you can get off my timeline and stop clout chasing. Thanks. Happy to work with other GOP on this." And I read that and I'm going, this is exactly why I like her. She said very, very as a matter of fact and true. I mean, I don't know how you work with somebody who tried to have you killed a couple of weeks ago. I just not sure how that works. But for me, the answer, there's a couple answers in all of this, and it all comes back down to taxing these Wall Street criminals pretty heavily. This idea that we've turned Wall Street into much more of a gambling casino than it's probably ever been. We can do instant trades with supercomputers that do millions of them per second. I go back to the idea that we have to have a transaction tax, and it's got to be to the point to where it's starting to really raise some big money. Or if you want to trade something, it's going to cost you a couple of pennies. And if you do that on every trade that goes on, you're going to raise some real money. And what you do is you make trading a little bit more expensive, so you don't have all these super, pumping and dumping kind of schemes going on, and that you actually start doing what investors are supposed to do, and that is investing, not gambling. Big difference. I literally know probably 30 people who have tried their hand at the day trading thing. I'm gonna make and they buy it. We're gonna make a ton of money, and I'm gonna buy high, and I'm gonna, no, wait a minute, I'm gonna sell high, and I'm gonna buy low. No, wait. And they don't even know which way to go because there's so many options, like these shorts you can do, that they get confused. And the house always wins. And it's just another way of America being fleeced. Now, do I love the fact that they pumped this stock way up and it cost hedge funds some money? Absolutely. But sadly, at the end of this, and this is the way I'm seeing it, somebody's got to be left holding the bag because GameStop's stock is probably only worth a couple of bucks. So if you bought at 400, you're going to get left holding the bag. You're going to lose. And while there was a bunch of winning going up, there is a bunch of losing coming down. And now, do I hope that the Wall Street people got in on this big time and the other places that were doing it? Absolutely. But sadly, I fear it's going to be people who, I got to make a lot of money. But my favorite quote and what made me jump on this is they asked one of the people why they were doing this, why they were pumping this up. And he said, this is for making us work on Thanksgiving night all the way through Black Friday at $9.50 an hour. This is a giant middle finger to Wall Street. And the question becomes, is this going to be the new normal? Will you have these kind of things popping up? We shall see. But, I'm not against the idea of sticking it to Wall Street. And I know, I got a big portion of my my existence tied up in 401ks and IRAs and all that stuff too. But at some point you got to go after these criminals. Just my thoughts. Another sad day. Another more than 4,000 people died today of the coronavirus. We're somewhere near 430,000 people dying. This is the second straight day in a row over 4,000. And look, they're saying, the number of people getting it are coming down. We're going to, the hospitalizations are declining. But, we got all these people who are still residually into this. And look, things were looking a little bit better until now they're saying, There's this new, more infectious variant of the virus may cause those numbers to turn around and right through the roof again. That's scary stuff. You've got other experts who are saying, look, now might be the time that you double down on the mask thing. Literally double down on the mask. Maybe moving away from just a cloth over your mouth and go get one of those N95 masks, or even the crappy Chinese knockoffs, the KN95s, because this is bad. They're claiming it's as much as 70% more transmissible. That scares me. That's bad. Because I was hoping to get through this by the spring, somewhat back to normal down the road. And now they're saying, well, what they've got there in the UK, very, very troubling. And what they had in, I guess it was South Africa. We now have the first case here. And you know what won't happen? Joe Biden isn't going to come down and go, oh, we've got it down, and it's going to go away. And you're not going to hear Joe Biden say any of that. We're going to have actual people who are going to contact trace. They're going to keep pushing the mask, keep pushing the social distancing, and doing the right things. The question is, are we going to listen? I was at the grocery store the other day with my giant mask on, and literally only a handful of other people with masks on. Most people, while we're at the peak of people dying, don't seem to be getting it. Now, the good thing is the president has reopened the healthcare.gov. They're going to open the window to enroll from February 15th to May 15th. So if you missed the open enrollment at the end of the year, because Donald Trump and the Trump administration did nothing. They did nothing to encourage people to sign up or even let them know it was possible. Biden's opening the window so that folks can climb in and get the health care get the health insurance that they need. Also today, some executive orders. Yes, more executive orders. We're going to basically undo everything that Trump has done over the time. But today was about health care and rolling back some of the anti-abortion stuff that Trump had done. I'm all in favor of it. Good. But the idea of opening up the Affordable Care Act and doing some things around reversing what Trump has done to healthcare is a good idea. Now you've got mayors across the country who are saying, hey, you got to get this bill, this rescue bill through. You've got to get this relief package into people's hands. You got to get state and local governments the ability to function. We need to load the coffers because we're getting to that moment where very soon the bills are going to start piling up and they're going to be shutting things down. And when things start to shut down, it's really hard to fire them back up. When you start running out of resources to do things, you start pulling back. And the startup, it gets to be really, really difficult. And now they're talking about having to cut back on garbage pickup. They're talking about, cutting public transit hours, which means, those people that we were calling essential workers and frontline heroes, those folks aren't going to get to work. And it's going to get even worse because, they're going to lose their jobs and all kinds of craziness. And, they're talking about, canceling infrastructure projects, which we cannot do. We've got so many problems. Cutting hours for government services. I mean, just all the bad that, look, to be honest, Republicans would be happy with. Because then we could privatize all that stuff, right? Government shouldn't be doing that. It's for the free market. Yeah. We've seen this movie before time and time again, and it never ends well for us, does it? It doesn't. And every time they have one of these crises, who ends up footing the bill? We the people do. Because understand, Wall Street's doing great. I forget the group that came out with the number last week. Like almost $1.5 trillion now have gone to our billionaire class since the beginning of the pandemic. They're doing wildly well. They're doing incredibly well. While where millions of us, not so much. In fact, they're saying that 2020, the contraction that happened to our economy in 2020 was the worst since 1946. And remember, we were going to have this V, we're going to come down, and we're going to right back to where we're going. And what we got is what everyone predicted, the K, where, the people who were, doing really well, were going to continue to do really well. And people who were just getting by, who were struggling, they're going to do much, much worse. Which is why I think it's important that Biden does push this chunky relief bill, this rescue plan of $1.9 trillion. And I think having Bernie as the chairman of the budget committee gets that out of the committee. And Bernie said, look, if we need to use budget reconciliation, we do that. He says, I want to be bipartisan. I want everyone to come together because this should be a bipartisan moment. This should be the moment where we go, you know what? We do want to help everyone in the country. We do want to make sure that no kid goes to bed hungry and no one loses their home or loses their job or loses their health insurance. We do want to make sure that families don't struggle through this tough time. We'll see. We'll see how many Republicans come along, because right now all I hear is them balking over, we can't do this, can't do that. Oh, now we care about the debt and the deficits. Now we care. It's insane to me. I mean, literally insane. But, here again, we're going after this, this same kind of rhetoric that we went through over the summer. And the question is when do Republican voters, go after their politicians and say, hey, do something for a change. Help people out. I was listening to the RNC chair talking about how, Joe Biden doesn't like working people and how the Republicans are so much better. I'm going, yeah, when? Show me when. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. I got lots to get to, lots to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about raising the minimum wage. When we come back, going to talk a little bit about the GameStop situation and how Joe Biden's done so far. I'm going to take a quick break right back after this. Stick around.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day Carmelita Torres led the bath riots at the El Paso-Juarez border. Mexican workers traveled daily across the Santa Fe Bridge from Juarez, Mexico, into El Paso, Texas for work. As a condition of entry, workers were required to strip naked and be sprayed with a toxic mixture of chemicals. U.S. health officials insisted they were trying to stop the spread of typhus through this type of delousing campaign. However, they were just as motivated by racist typecasting of Mexicans as dirty. David Dorado Romo, author of Ringside to a Revolution, tells the story of 17-year-old Carmelita Torres. Amid rumors that health workers secretly photographed and then distributed photos of the naked women as they were being sprayed, Carmelita crossed into El Paso every day where she worked as a maid. But on this day, instead of stripping down, she refused fumigation and convinced the other women to demonstrate with her against this humiliating daily procedure. Within an hour, she and 200 other women had blocked all traffic coming into El Paso. Newspaper reports claimed several thousand protesters by the end of the day. The women marched to the disinfection camp, hoping to convince those undergoing disinfection to join them. When health officials tried to disperse the crowd, they were met with rocks and bottles. The women then laid down on the trolley tracks to stop the delivery of more workers and wrestled with motormen for control of the cars. The riots lasted for 3 days, but the spraying of Mexican workers with DDT and other toxic chemicals continued for more than 40 years. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said, I'm a big fan of AOC, especially the comments around Ted Cruz. Anytime someone can punch Ted Cruz in the nose, it makes me happy. No, I don't mean actually punch him in the nose, but well, maybe I do. But I do like to see the way she took him down, especially over this issue, because isn't he supposed to be the guy who's the free market guy and the invisible hand and keep government out of things? Kind of crazy. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on this whole GameStop scenario, what it means and what it's going to look like, I guess, in the coming days. I've asked our good friend Jeff Hauser to come talk with us. Jeff is the executive director of the Revolving Door Project at the Center for Economic Policy and Research. Their website, therevolvingdoorproject.org. Jeff, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, anytime.
So what do you make of this GameStop thing? I'm watching it over the last couple of days going, this is fun to watch because I know a lot of the Wall Street people aren't happy, but at some point somebody's going to get left holding the bag. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that there is an element of new and there's an element of old here. And I think there is some stuff that's on the surface and some stuff that's a little bit beneath it. And by that, I don't think this is only a story of people on Reddit versus a few hedge funds. I suspect there are some hedge funds that were riding alongside the Redditors. That doesn't mean the Redditors were in on some sort of conspiracy, but I think the entire business model of Robinhood, which is one of the key ways by which people are purchasing stock and more exotic options, is to charge no fees, but get really crappy prices for people. And the way they make it work is that they allow, they sell market flow information. And so you're letting a big hedge fund, ironically, know what the orders are going to be. And so they get to front run. They get to like, wow, there's a wave of interest in GameStop. So we're going to buy right before them at a slightly better price. And we know it's going to immediately receive a positive benefit because the price is going to go higher when the small time investor orders go through. And so this is all like both the populisty, pseudo-populisty investor versus hedge funds, but it's also hedge funds versus hedge funds. And these sort of fights, have gone on for decades. But just in general, I think the overall like stock market and the economy is a little frothy. And the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme and the Stanford Ponzi scheme and other Ponzi schemes that, we learned about, another fraud in 2008 during the subprime mortgage and other, sort of bubble fiasco. Then we had lots of weird stuff around the dot-com bubble in 2000. Generally, when the stock market is a bit overpriced, you start seeing this sort of more exotic action happening on the side. To me, it's a sign that even in our country, the rich can't keep getting richer and the stock market can't possibly be worth what it's currently worth. And this is a byproduct. But it also means like these .com and fintech ways to buy stocks and work around normal rules and limits, they're really dangerous.
No, you're right. So you're anticipating, as I am, a correction, not a crash, but a correction, right?
Like generally speaking, there is a broad tendency to some logic behind stock market prices, but like, look, things can be irrational for a really long time. Like there's a lot that is irrational in our economy. The stock market does not work how they teach it to you if you take an economics class in high school or an introductory college economics class. That's not how the stock market works. And so I certainly have no prediction as to like what the stock market's going to be like tomorrow, let alone 6 months or 6 years from now. But overall, it does seem like it's a bit overpriced. Some of this is because interest rates are low and people have nothing to do with their money. And so they're like, well, I'll take a risk. And, fads develop in the stock market. But basically, this is a time in which you want to have some financial regulators put in place who are serious-minded people who don't take this sort of bogus Wall Street activity seriously, and they police the fraud.
Yeah, what do you say to the person though, Jeff, who goes, "Well, this is the free market. They should be able to do whatever they want. This is the Wild West. This is pure capitalism at its finest."
Well, I don't think, and there's, been some actions against Robinhood that people don't understand, in fact, what the Robinhood business model is by which they're purchasing these call options on GameStop. They don't understand that Robinhood is selling their preferences, that information instantaneously to market makers, and that their trades are being front run. I mean, it's not the free market if you're taking advantage of information asymmetries and people don't understand what is really going on. But yeah, I mean, some of these people are very sophisticated, and I'm certainly fine with hedge funders getting bankrupted or partial, or at least taking a big wallop. Like, I'm fine with that. It's all gamesmanship in that sense within the sort of rules that exist. But whether or not this is really what we should have all these creative people spending all their time thinking about, whether or not the stock market is serving a purpose like what the textbooks would suggest it exists to do, I mean, I just don't think it is. The stock market is not serving the identification process of what is an undervalued corporation. It's all about gamesmanship. And so I don't have a problem for it as a crying for the victims here. I more just say, like, is this a useful institution, and can we make it more useful?
No, excellent point. Because, in my lifetime, we've moved from, we want to see how Main Street's doing, and businesses had, they would report their profits and that kind of stuff, and it was a sign of how they were doing as a company. Now they were completely divorced from reality, because GameStop, I don't think is going to be around in 5 years. I may be wrong, but their model, if it doesn't change, is probably not going to be around. So this has nothing to do with reality. This is, as you said, just kind of a game.
Oh yeah, I mean, because even if it turns out that there's a way to make the company that is currently called GameStop profitable, it's not clear why, like, the brand equity is such that it makes sense to take over an entity that has all of these physical stores that are currently losing money and has obligations on leases. It might be better off just buying the brand. Like, you might be better off like just starting an online way to sell video games, which of course actually exists. So I don't understand. I don't think there's really much a good faith analysis as to why GameStop could be worth it. The big picture is FDR came in and said, look, Wall Street as a casino undermines the economy. I want to make Wall Street boring again. That didn't mean people didn't make pretty good livings working on Wall Street. That didn't mean we got rid of stocks. We didn't have socialism, for better or for worse, when FDR was president and for the next 40 years. But we did have a pretty boring Wall Street. That was not even what the graduates of business schools didn't want. Wall Street jobs. They wanted jobs in the real economy. And that started shifting in the 1970s. And I'd say for the last, close to half a century, the American economy has gotten weaker as Wall Street's role in the economy has grown stronger. And so I think this is the sort of thing that Bernie Sanders supporters, Elizabeth Warren supporters, progressives, populists, we should be pushing against the idea that having a casino run our economy is a good idea.
Yeah. No, I've said what we need two things. More than anything, we need an Eisenhower-esque tax code, and we need to put a transaction tax on all of these trades. And you make trading more expensive. Or if you're going to gamble, we're going to make it a lot more expensive on you, and we're going to use that money in a more constructive way than you are just gambling. But I think ultimately the tax code of where we just make it the kind of obscene money that these people are making just not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. A transactions tax makes all these sort of going in and out of trades basically worthless. It makes the little front running trades where you get a very, very slightly better price and then you resell it at like you just do it like at a huge volume. The high frequency traders, these are really worthless uses of our economy. Like, billions of dollars are spent to make billions plus a few more billions. And it's all just gross. It's wasteful. It promotes economic inequality. It promotes instability. Like, we do not have a stable economy in the way we did under Eisenhower. And that was because while Eisenhower was a Republican, he existed within the construct, the New Deal construct, that was very durable for 40 years. And I think we should be trying to move back in that direction.
Yeah, any chance we get a Biden administration to start moving in that direction? Now, look, I know that raising taxes on the rich, while very popular among citizens of the country, not really popular amongst the Republicans in the Senate, and probably even some Democrats in the Senate. But I think you have to do it. I think AOC was right. We should have it, at least a 40% tax on people making, tens of millions of dollars a year. I would even go far as back to, maybe when Kennedy was president and he dropped it down to 70%, I'd be okay there. But we got to do something.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day when the marginal tax rates at the high end on the rich were really high, corporate executives, their incentives were very different. And part of why they worked better with unionized workforces and in general were more responsible stewards was that they didn't really have an economic incentive to try to make more money, because on the margin, the next 100,000 they might make was going to be taxed at 90%. So was it really worth it? And then we didn't have this stock option craze. There were a lot of different structures that aligned the incentives of corporate executives more in line with their communities and their stakeholders, and that would be good. And I think, Biden, there's the case for being a bit optimistic, which I know optimism is almost out of fashion in 2021 for lots of good reasons. But the case for optimism would be, look, you're appointing a Gary Gensler to the SEC, who really does not brook with any of this bull. Rohit Chopra to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We have a handful of very key positions coming down the line, but you're beginning to see some populist instincts in even the Biden administration. And so what it comes down to is the next 2 years, laying down some markers, being popular, making people like Ted Cruz the face of the Republican Party, a face that everyone wants to, as you suggest, metaphorically, of course, smack, having that guy be the face and having a good midterm election. It is imperative for the Democratic Party and for small d democracy that Democrats win the 2022 midterm. So we need to be populist enough and accomplish enough now that we get some wind behind us. And then you can imagine in 2023, Congress doing some things, getting rid of the filibuster if it still survives, imposing a financial transactions tax, playing around with a wealth tax, increasing the highest marginal income taxes, making Wall Street boring again, and also providing a ton of benefits for the 99%.
A listener sent me a chart today and wanted me to remind people that because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, taxes are going to go up this year on people making, I think it was $45,000 a year. And then in 2 years, it's going to go up again on the next jump up. So every next couple of years, the tax rates on the working class are going to continue to go up. We're not touching the rich people for way down the road. But right now they're taxing the hell out of us. And, when people start hearing about taxes, Jeff, we've been trained like Pavlovian dogs to just kind of foam at the mouth. And when I say we need to raise taxes, we need to raise taxes on the people who have all the money, the people who just made a cool $1.5 trillion throughout this pandemic. I think something that would be very popular that should pass today is say, look, you made that $1.5 trillion. We're gonna take a good portion of that because we need to redistribute it downward to help people stay in their homes.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that astonishes me about the style presidential campaign that was run in both 2016 and 2020 is something that is very different than in 2012 or 2018. In 2012, people forget this, but Obama ran ads about the need to raise taxes on rich people. He ran those ads in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Barack Hussein Obama, who was demonized by some of the worst, most racist stuff this country has ever, well, I mean, not the most worst stuff this country's ever seen, because this country has seen some awful stuff, but he, victim of all sorts of attacks, he crushed John McCain, war hero, charismatic, funny guy, got along great with the media. He crushed him by like 8 points in Wisconsin. Only a figure like Tammy Baldwin, another strong populist, wins like that. In 2018, Democrats ran against the Trump tax cuts and did so very well. In 2016 and 2020, in turn, Democrats ran on Trump's really kind of a jerk, and our candidate is a nicer person. And like with Biden, it was somewhat persuasive, but barely in the key states. With Clinton, it was not quite enough. But I think if we return to, we want to tax the rich so that we can help everyone else, I think that's a very convincing message. And I think if you look at the 2012 and 2018 elections, you can see why I might think that.
No, I'm right there with you. And I've been saying the exact same thing. And the argument I make is, the 2 weeks before the election in 2016, all I heard from Hillary Clinton is, I'm not him. And that wasn't a convincing message. But, ultimately, I think we have to get to a point to where these next couple of months, Biden and the Democrats in the Senate have to do some bold stuff. Because if you're not making people's lives better, if things don't get better going into 2022, it could be a bloodbath, and we could have real problems.
Yeah, I think there need to be a lot of fights. There need to be a lot of initiatives. My biggest viewpoint is that we should never ask questions about what is your top priority or what is the one thing Congress should work on, because we are a country amidst a series of crises. We have an enormous number of problems, and we shouldn't, pit different people with real problems against each other. So we should fight a lot of fights. I think the key is not to win every fight in 2021 and 2022. The math is not good for Biden being able to win on everything. He has to win on some very real stuff legislatively. He needs to act aggressively in the executive branch. He needs to provide some real resources and some real wins to people. But also, some of the times he loses, you can take those losses to the American people in 2022. Harry Truman in 1948 ran against a do-nothing Congress. And if we have a do-nothing Senate led because of Mitch McConnell's filibuster obstruction, I mean, you and I might want to get rid of the filibuster, but if that's the Senate that we have, run against it and run hard. And if there's some fight, lose some fights where you're losing on the popular side. You could ultimately win by losing. No,
I'm with you. I've said the compromise on the filibuster is simple. We return to the days where if you want to filibuster, you get your Bible, you get your phone book, you get whatever, and you hold the floor. None of this secret behind the scenes stuff. You get out there and you make your case.
Yeah, and the thing is that then they are drawing attention to the issue. And if you have called the question and you know that your side, you're fighting for the $15 minimum wage, and the other side is Ted Cruz on TV for 10 hours, like which side's going to win? Yep. You have the $15 minimum wage and they have Ted Cruz or Josh Hawley talking. I'm sorry. I think I am not, even if ultimately speaking in the short run, we don't get the $15 minimum wage, that would help so many people. I'd rather get it, but the politics of it are we either get the win or we make the other side look terrible.
There you go. Good stuff. Jeff, I appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Our good friend, Jeff Hauser. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1932. That was the day the first unemployment insurance law was established in the United States. It happened in Wisconsin. Governor Philip La Follette signed the Unemployment Compensation Act. La Follette had a reputation as a progressive leader. Under the new law, employers were required to contribute to a fund based on their payrolls. Many across Wisconsin were out of work due to the Great Depression, but not all workers were covered by the act. Farm workers, domestic workers, railroad workers, teachers, and loggers were among those excluded. Employers with less than 10 workers also did not have to participate. Due to the Great Depression, it took a while to build up enough money in the insurance pool to actually pay out benefits. California, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, Utah, and Washington soon followed Wisconsin's lead. Then, in 1935, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act into law. Part of this act was to encourage states to establish unemployment insurance systems for their workers. The first unemployment insurance benefit check went to Niles Rudd of Madison, Wisconsin on August 17, 1936. He was an out-of-work photo engraver. He received the maximum allowable benefit of $15. Today, unemployment insurance programs remain a federal-state partnership administered under state laws. That means each state has a different maximum dollar amount and length of time the benefits can be used. Recently, unemployment insurance protections have been rolled back in some states. Since 2011, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Kansas, Michigan, Missouri, and North and South Carolina have all cut the amount of time that people can receive unemployment benefits. In North Carolina, that length dropped from 26 weeks down to just 14.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this week we've been talking a lot about the minimum wage increase because, look, I think it's fantastic that Joe Biden's saying that, we're going to do this on the federal level with all federal contracts. I think the language that he's using in his executive orders very good. And I hope in the budget reconciliation process, if this is where it has to come down to, if in this rescue package we can get the $15 an hour minimum wage, I'm told it's over the next 4 or 5 years till 2025, incrementally get that raised up. I think it's going to help our economy. I think it's going to help working families, and it's going to in this moment, I think help states and local governments. Because people are going to be able to pay their own freight. They're going to make a living wage to where they don't have to go begging to the government for help, which is one of those things I've just firmly believed in for so long. And that's why I have asked Frances Holmes to come talk with us. Frances is a fast food worker from St. Louis. She's with the Fight for 15 people. And look, got to be thrilled going on this. Frances, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me.
So walk me through this. I mean, I look at your story. You're a 58-year-old woman, certainly not one of the pimply-faced teenagers that we're told work in the fast food industry. Tell me what it's like for you to work where you do.
It's a struggle for me. I make $10.30 an hour. It's not enough. I'm currently on Section 8. Thank you, Jesus, for that, or else I probably would be homeless due to the pandemic. And right now, I currently receive food stamps. But that's about to change because the minimum wage went up. So that's going to change for me.
Right. So let me ask you this, because, one of the arguments that I get from people is like, Rick, we don't need to raise the minimum wage because people like you just said, you get Section 8, you get some food stamps, maybe some LIHEAP, maybe some other programs. Do you really want to go through all the nonsense of having to go and sign up for all of those programs and figure out how to navigate all of those pathways to be able to just survive? Or do you just want your work to be able to afford you a reasonable standard of living?
It would be lovely for me to go to work 40 hours a week and that pays my way. That would be so nice. That's why I'm a proud low-wage worker fighting this fight. This is exactly why. That would be like tremendous for me to be able to afford what I need to afford without government assistance. I don't even have, working for fast food, I don't have a retirement plan set in place for when I retire. So that means I probably would never retire. But with $15 an hour, that would allow me to set place for me to retire.
Now, my goal in this has always been from the beginning of the Fight for 15 movement is it's the rest of the sentence. It's Fight for 15 and a union.
And a union, yes, sir.
Because
a union, we need the union just a little bit more than we need the $15 because they can give us the $15 and without a union, they can snatch that back. We had that happen here in St. Louis. The Fight for 15 won a minimum wage of $10 an hour, and they took that back due to the fact that we weren't in a union. They took it back. So
And
I know what the importance of having a union would do with the $15 an hour.
and this is where I keep coming back to I understand you don't have health care, your employer doesn't provide it, as you just said. You don't have any type of retirement. For me, this is what the union does, and as a 30+ year union member, I'm so grateful to my union for negotiating good health care and good retirement security, and I want that for everyone. Which is why when I look at you and I look at the fight that you guys are engaging in, that part of it, the union part of it, is really, I think, just as important, if not more so, for the $15. But let me ask you this: we're in this moment where we're almost in this weird kind of Hunger Games scenario where you've got people saying, "Well, I make $15 an hour now. What about me?" And my mindset always goes to this place of, well, I think we can all do better, because as a country, we'll all do better when we all do better.
Yes. And what they don't understand is if my wages go up to $15 an hour, 99% of the time you are already in a union. Your wages is going to meet the poverty wages. It's going to meet due to your union. Your job going to make sure you get what you do. So with us as low-wage workers trying to get a livable wage, those people who already have a livable wage should, if they haven't been through a struggle, they should know what a struggle is. To see that if they work on my wages, if they could make it. They could not.
I look at at the work that you do, and I'm a firm believer in that there's dignity in every job. If you get up, you punch the clock, you work 40 hours a week, you should be able to support yourself and your family. I believe that there should be reward to work, and that whole thing I grew up believing, because we're almost the same age. I grew up believing that if you worked hard, you played by the rules, you got ahead. And sadly, I look at fast food workers, I look at other low wage workers, and they're getting screwed in this economy. And I'm glad to see that you've said you've had enough. But what are your coworkers? What experience are you getting from them?
Okay, so me being a leader within the Fight for 15 for the last 6 years, when it's strike time, I set stores down. I take everybody that works there, except for management, with me on strike. That's the only way that they're going to hear and know and feel the power that we have. That's what I tell my coworkers. This is the only way they're going to know that we got the power.
Right.
If we're not here, they can't run their business if we're not here. So we all need to participate in the fight. It's not just for me. It's for each and every low-wage worker there is. It's for us. We need a livable wage, $15 and a union.
Yeah, and not just for you and your coworkers, but for the next generation. And I keep saying that when we do finally pass the minimum wage, because it's been almost 12 years since the last time it was raised. 2009. The last law was passed in 2007. So we're talking almost 14 years since the last law was passed, and 12 years since the last increase happened. When that happens, I hope that there's an index so that it raises with inflation, so that we don't have to have a $7.25 an hour wage that's been eroded by over a decade of inflation, to where it's even more of a poverty wage than it was when it started.
Yes.
So it is that simple. Let me ask you this. I mean, because you've said you guys have gone out on strike. Again, is this the kind of turmoil that you want? I mean, most people just want to go to work. They want to do their job, and they want to be able to go home to their families. You spend a lot of time doing this. You're very passionate about it. Tell us why.
I am so passionate about this movement. I'm 58 years old. I have 6 grandchildren and a great grandchild. I refuse to allow the younger generation to not be able to survive, not be able to know that their voices is powerful. If it's right, if it's the right fight, then you raise your voice for the right fight. And to me, show me 15 and a union is the right fight. This is just the right fight for me. I'm going to fight this fight. I was unemployed for a while. I did home health care, but I couldn't participate in the fight for 15 like I needed to because of the work I was doing. So I had to get back into the food industry. I live and I breathe this movement. It's not for me. I'm almost at the end of my rope with as far as work concerns. I'm getting real close to the end. But before I go, I want everybody to have a livable wage. Everybody. That's my purpose for this fight.
Right. Because I'm thinking about, you're 58 years old. Being a fast food worker is not an easy gig. I mean, I know a lot of people are like, well, it doesn't take much to do. No, it's a tough job, isn't it? It's a dangerous job.
Yes, it is. I 1 year ago, this very day, I broke my wrist. That's how I ended up losing my job at McDonald's. I broke my wrist, and they still wanted me to do heavy lifting, and my wrist was broke. I could not do it. It was either do the work or you don't work here. So I did not work there. I mean, those are things. That's an example of why we need a union with this $15. That's a prime example. I'm hurt. I cannot perform these duties. I can still come to work and do a job, but I can't do this job, the job that you have me do every day. This job I just cannot do, not with my wrist broke. That's what happens when you don't have a union.
It's crazy what these companies get away with, which again is why I say 15 and a union is the minimum at the end of this. So last line of questioning I've got for you, because at the end of this is gonna take a movement. This is gonna take a push of people demanding that this get through. What are you suggesting people do to help? How can we help? How can we get the message out?
So right now, what we're doing in the fight for 15 is we're reaching out to people and asking them to call their senators. Call the senators in your state that represent your state and ask them to pass this bill. Democrat, Republican, nonpartisan, we don't care who you are. If you're a part of the House or the Senate, we need you here. We need y'all help. We need your help, and we need people that's listening to this broadcast right now. We need people like you that care about our lives, low-wage workers' lives. We ask you to help us push forward toward the Senate.
And it's a great thing. Reach out to the senators, call them early, call them often, and make sure that they're either on the right side. And if they are, congratulate them, thank them. If they're not, call them even more until they are. But for people who are listening, those fast food workers that are out there tonight, what's your response? What do you say to them? How do you get them on board?
This is to the fast food workers.
Yeah.
If you're not, whatever state you live in, because we're just about in every state, if you're not within the fight for 15 in your state, please join this movement. This is about us. It's starting with us, the fast food workers. We're trying to put this in place. Look like we're going to get the 15. It's looking good on that part. But the union part, we need at least 20% of the store to do a union. So come on, y'all, get aboard. We got work to do. Us as fast food workers, we leading the way. We've been leading the way for a long time. We're going to lead the way. McDonald's think they're ahead. We're going to move ahead of them. I need 20% of your stores.
There you go. Good stuff. Frances, I appreciate your time. I wish you the best. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you so much, Francis Holmes, fast food worker there in St. Louis. And look, this is one of those situations where, and I talk about this all the time. Do you believe in what we grew up believing? That you work hard, you play by the rules, you get ahead. That all work matters. And this is one of those things to me. It doesn't matter to me what you do. You shouldn't have to ask for a handout. You shouldn't have to ask for help to afford a place to live. You shouldn't have to ask for food stamps to help put food on the table. You shouldn't have to work 2 or 3 or 4 jobs to try and cobble together an existence. And this is where, I go back to my original mindset of, if the public sector can't or won't create enough good paying jobs, this is where the public sector has to step in. And we need to make sure that there's a floor under people's feet, which is why I think Biden's executive order saying that all federal contractors have to pay at least $15 an hour is a step in the right direction. And we need more of that. We need more when we are talking about government procurement. And that's at the federal, state, local levels. That should be the rule all the way down. We shouldn't be using taxpayer dollars to make people's lives better. To make it worse. We should be making their lives better. We should be raising standards, raising the floor up for people. And I know you're going to get the right-wing cranks out there going, no, we need to squeeze the quarter till the eagle screams. We need to cheat. We need to cheat who we can and cut corners how we can because we're saving money for our rich people because we got to give them tax cuts. Because remember, we gave $1.9 trillion in tax breaks to our very wealthy. We have seen almost a 60% rise in corporate profits. It's crazy. We've seen inflation go up. Prices have gone up over 20% over these last couple of years. And yet the minimum wage is still $7.25. Still. Think about this. It passed in the summer. The last increase was the summer of 2009. That was it. Now, she makes, I think she said like $10.30 an hour. That's great. That's a step up. But it's still not enough to live on. And I keep saying this, what does it take to live on that kind of wage? Especially when these companies are making just enormous amounts of profit, which again takes me back to the union part. Make as much profit as you want. And when we sit down and we negotiate the next contract, I'm going to want a part of it. And we're going to want to make sure that all of the workers who created your wealth, who went out and did the hard work, that they get compensated well for it. Just my thoughts. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. The only people whose names are recorded in history are those who have done something. The peaceful and indifferent are forgotten. They never know the fighting joy of living. Those words were spoken in Seattle by Elizabeth Gurley Flynn. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. Flynn certainly embraced the fighting joy of living as a leader in the industrial workers of the world. She became a full-time organizer for the IWW in 1907. She traveled the country organizing workers from Pennsylvania to Montana, from New Jersey to Massachusetts, Minnesota to Washington. In 1920, she was a founding member of the American Civil Liberties Union. During World War II, Flynn fought for equal pay for women. During her career, Flynn was arrested 10 times for her organizing activities. In 1951, she was sent to prison for 2 years for alleged activities subversive to the United States government. A tireless fighter for workers and women's rights, Flynn became the chairwoman of the U.S. Communist Party in 1961. She died while on a visit to the Soviet Union in 1964, and in her honor, Fellow labor activist Joe Hill wrote this song, Rebel Girl.
Her hands may be hardened from labor, and her dress may not be very fine, but a heart in her bosom is beating that is true to her class and her kind, and the grafters in terror are trembling when her spite and defiance she'll hurl for the only and thoroughbred.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
In a world that's clogged and choking with a massive overdose of plastic trash, you will be heartened to learn that governments and industries are teaming up to respond forcefully to this planetary crisis. Unfortunately, their response has been to engage in a global race to make more plastic stuff and to force poor countries to become dumping grounds for plastic garbage. Leading this Kafkaesque greed fest are such infamous plunderers and polluters as ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell, and other petrochemical profiteers. With fossil fuel profits crashing, the giants are rushing to convert more of their oversupply of oil into plastic. But where to send the monstrous volumes of waste that will result? The industry's chief lobbyist outfit, the American Chemistry Council, looked around last year and suddenly shouted, "Eureka! There's Africa!" In particular, they're targeting Kenya to become a plastics hub for global trade in waste. However, Kenyans have an influential community of environmental activists who've enacted some of the world's toughest bans on plastic pollution. To bypass this inconvenient local opposition, the dumpers are resorting to an old corporate power play, free trade. Their lobbyists are pushing an autocratic trade agreement that would ban Kenyan officials from passing their own laws or rules that interfere with trade in plastic waste. Trying to hide their ugliness, the plastic profiteers created a PR front group called Alliance to End Public Waste. But hello, it's not public waste. Exxon and other funders of the alliance make, promote, and profit from the mountains of destructive trash they now demand we clean up. This is Jim Hightower saying the real problem is not waste, but plastic itself. Rather than subsidizing more of the stuff, we should seek out and encourage people who are developing real solutions and alternatives.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I gotta tell you, I love the crazy new congresswomen who are one from Georgia, one from Colorado. Just lots of entertainment out of the two of them. And the most recent entertainment comes in the form of the crazy woman obviously harassing a teenage boy walking through the halls of Congress and writing bizarre stuff. Evidently, according to her, and this is really weird, on one of her Facebook posts, she claims that that there are these companies that are beaming sun energy back to the country. They're beaming it down to us, and she writes, if they're beaming the sun's energy back to Earth, I'm sure they wouldn't ever miss a transmitter receiving station, right? What would it look like anyway? A laser beam or a light beam coming down to Earth, I guess. Could that cause a fire? I don't know, she writes. I hope not. It wouldn't look so good for PG&E and Rothschild Incorporated and Solarian or Jerry Brown, who sure does seem fond of PGE. So it's kind of this really weird kind of thing where she's claiming, I guess, that Jerry Brown is starting the fires with magic rays from the sun. And now look, it would be funny. She's just a kooky old lady, living on the street corner. This woman's in Congress. Not only is she in Congress, she's going to be on the Education Committee. Oh, my goodness. And here to share some thoughts on our crazy Congresswoman from Georgia, our good friend Sarah Burris, reporter from Raw Story. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hello. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday or Q Crazy Day.
Special people.
Yeah, special.
That's what Trump said, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're very special.
Nothing but the best. Nothing but the best here. Really, magic rays of sunshine, evidently causing the fires in California, and Jerry Brown doing it on purpose.
I'm just imagining like how big that mirror would need to be, and to guide the sunlight into and like how to make that work without anybody seeing it. Like if there's something really that large in space that is reflecting the sun, you could see it from the earth. This is not difficult. This is just sort of science. But I understand that a lot of these folks have issues with science. So, I mean, what do you do?
Yeah,
they just think that there's some giant chicken aiming a magnifying glass over the earth.
Evidently, I mean, and here's the thing that gets me is, to me, putting this woman on not just the education committee, but the labor committee as well, tells me that Republicans hate both education and labor. And this is where they decided we were going to put the dumbest person in Congress right there. Good luck. Good luck there, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Right there in those two really extremely important committees.
They are extremely important. Luckily, the Republicans are in the minority. What I think this does is say more about Republicans and how they view education, and how they support all of these crackpot ideas that I guess they think should be in schools. 9/11 is an inside job. That was one of her conspiracy theories. All of these school shootings are false flags, which to me seems like something that you probably shouldn't believe if you're on the education committee. So this really does say a lot about Kevin McCarthy and the Republican Party. This isn't just a crazy nutter. I mean, she is a crazy nutter, but it isn't just a crazy nutter. This is an entire party that supports her and the work that she is doing on the education committee.
Is she really doing work? I mean, is being crazy work? I mean, is being this kind of out there, is that really work?
Well, given the nutters that I had to deal with on Twitter today, that was a lot of work.
Yeah, for you. They were just being themselves.
I know. I don't know how people have the time. At one point I did I almost thought about like making a joke and being like, I'm so sorry, I've been super occupied with my human taxidermy collection. I just, haven't had time. But I didn't, because then it would end up on a message board somewhere.
Yeah, that's probably true. And then all the insanity begins. But I read this article by Jennifer Rubin. And I'm generally not a huge fan of her. I mean, she, like a blind squirrel, she finds a nut. But she did hit it on the head today. I've been saying this for a very long time. Why do Republicans keep voting for people who don't do anything or don't believe in government or are crazy like this woman? And she wrote this piece today saying, just if you're not going to do the work, just stop running. Just stop.
Yeah. But I think that's a big part, from what I remember from the Tea Party in 2010, that was a big part of their message. They wanted to run for Congress to stop things. And so I don't know the degree to which the Tea Party has become, the Republican Party has become the Trump Party, and how much of those ideas are still left.
Right.
Because Mitch McConnell sort of became this, stop everything person in what, 2010 or 2012?
2009. He came out and said,
he took over,
we're going to make him a one-term, I hope he fails. We're going to make him a one-term president. And they did everything they could do to gridlock and delay. And then he became the majority leader. And then it was just all about getting nothing done.
Yeah. And then it was literally stopping everything. And it still stopped. Like, that's the thing. We're in the majority. We have a 50-50 split with Kamala Harris as our tiebreaker. And so we control all of the committees. But And yet things still aren't working because of the filibuster. And you've got Kristen Sinema from Arizona and Joe Manchin from West Virginia who do not want things to move forward because they don't want to get rid of the filibuster.
And there's a couple other ones in there as well. I mean, you throw in Warner from Virginia. I don't think he's on board either. There's a number of conservative Democrats, which is why I actually think McConnell wants them to crush the filibuster because he knows he can keep the Republicans in line. He knows that Schumer's never going to be able to keep the Democrats in line.
Yeah, I think that is a big point. I think he wants to get rid of the filibuster because it does give Republicans more power. But at the same time, I've thought the filibuster was crap from when the Republicans were in charge.
I still do. And I say we should just scrap the filibuster as it is and return to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. You want a filibuster? You get out there, you start reading the phone book. You start reading.
I think that's totally legitimate. If for no other reason, then that's the whole point of what the founders had in mind is people debating on the floor. They wanted bipartisanship. They wanted people to debate the issues, or officials to debate the issues. And so this idea that you would have to filibuster and presumably talk about your issues while also reading the phone book. But I think that that's what was intended. And I think the American people deserve to see that. If it is Ted Cruz reading Green Eggs and Ham, then so be it.
No, I'm of the mindset that if it's really that important that we can't have a vote on it, and we can't move a piece of legislation because it's really all about the cloture vote. Nothing gets past the cloture vote. I say we make it, if it's that important to you that we're going to stop this piece of legislation, that everything else stops. Nothing else gets done until we deal with that issue. I think we would find some more compromise.
I think so too. I'm with you.
So the question is, how do we get there?
Talk to Joe Manchin.
Yeah, there is that. But lots of crazy stuff now. Have you been following this GameStop thing? The Reddit people and the Wall Street people and
I've made $800.
Get out of here!
I swear to God. I swear to God. So I started with basically all I put into it is about $250, which is I was supposed to pay my insurance. So I need to cash out pretty soon because my payment's going to be late. So I put in a little bit on GameStop. It got to be too high for me, but then I got in early on AMC and that went up and now I have $800.
So are you still in or are you out?
I'm still in it. I figured why the hell not sit on it and check it tomorrow and then see if I can pull out tomorrow.
Because it's great as long as you're rising.
Yeah.
What happens when you get to that other side and it starts going way down?
Well, that's a big part of what folks have been saying online is don't sell. Sit on it until next week. And everybody's talking about sitting on it. And I told my mom about it today and she was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you did that. You have to sell it right now." And I was like, well, it's the end of the day. So,
See, mother knows best.
I haven't even looked at it since probably 2:00. And I actually had, because I use the Stash app that pulls $1 a week or something out of your account and sticks it in whatever. And so I have it invested in green technologies. And I put I think I had $100 in Apple that is now $160. So these are my exciting investments in life. But I didn't know anything about investing. And so I kind of use the app to sort of teach myself a little bit. And then it just turned into this thing. And I started watching it and was like, I wonder what this would do. I was just curious.
Yeah.
And then because GameStop did so crazy, I was like, all right, I'm going to throw my insurance check in there and for a couple of days and see what happens there. And then I'll pull it out.
Roll the dice. Do a little gambling.
I know. So there we go.
I hope your horse comes in.
I know, because I definitely need to pay for my car insurance and some other bills.
Hope he doesn't trip at the finish line.
Almost. Yeah. Huh.
Hope it doesn't trip at the finish line.
Oh, I know. I think that's why I think I should probably pull out sooner because I hate late payments. I try really, really hard to be on time. So, but hey, I'm going to be able to pay off a bunch of stuff.
All right, that's great, and I'm all in favor of that. I hope a whole bunch of Wall Street people lost a bunch of money. There's nothing I like to see more than a little redistribution of wealth from rich people to working people.
Well, the thing that really hacks me off is what we found out today about the Robinhood app, and about how they've been basically giving intel to some hedge fund company. Well, I can't remember what it's called.
The TD Ameritrade?
Oh, it was another one. It started with a C. I kept wanting to see Calista, but that's not right. I can't remember. But that, and then the fact that basically Wall Street freaked out and froze everything. And the Securities Exchange Commission was like, yeah, you can't do that. Like, we understand that all you rich people are freaking out because the commoners have gotten involved, but there are still laws and regulations for this stuff, and you can't behave you're actually in control of it. And so there is this part of me that like really feels like, even though the Robinhood app is like complete crap and they're terrible, it feels like this very Robinhood thing. It's like, yes, we are taking over the economy and we're fighting back against the Wall Street machine, and it gets me excited. So little things in life.
I'm glad you're happy about it. Now they're talking about some kind of investigation, which led Ted Cruz to agree with something that AOC had to say, which then broke the internet.
Yeah, and that's not even like he's not even talking about. They're not talking about investigating the individual buyers. They're talking about investigating these companies,
right?
And how they tried to screw individual Americans out of investing in the market.
To which she basically punched him right in the nose.
I know. Bless her heart. And that's not a condescending bless your heart. That's just like, bless you. Because she smacked him down hardcore. She's been really, she's always great, but this week in particular, she's just been on the ball about stuff. And she's kind of, you remember how we used to call Bill Clinton the explainer in chief? She's better. Yeah. She's way better.
No,
she's one of us.
No, she's fantastic, and if only she could teach the rest of the Democrats how to do that.
Dude, for real, she's amazing at it.
She should do some trainings.
Yeah, lot.
Because she's one of the only ones on the Democratic side. The Republicans do it really well. They've got a machine. Democrats, not so much.
Yeah.
Little work there. Little work there.
Really.
Let's move along. Mitch McConnell evidently mocked for evidently he read something on the internet, and if it's on the internet, must be true. But I guess it's a quote that Biden didn't actually say.
Yeah, and you would think that Mitch McConnell would be a lot better about that after, who was it? Adam Schiff read the Onion article with the Trump conversation transcript that was a joke. You would think that Mitch McConnell would be a lot better about it, but clearly not. He basically took some random quote, changed one of the words in it, and then took the whole thing out of context and read it like it was Biden talking about executive orders. Biden has, I don't even know how many executive orders we are at this point, but Trump had 220 executive orders in 4 years.
Right.
And I think it's something like, I want to say 284 that George W. Bush had in 8 years. So this is a lot of executive orders. And this idea that Biden is sort of going rogue and doing all these executive orders, these are all sort of just rectifying what was in place. So rolling all of those back, once we hit the 220 mark from rolling those back, then I guess you could talk about executive orders, but until then, bite me.
Yeah, I said, can we just do one? You just go, everything, every one of those 220 executive orders, I hereby roll back.
I think that would be lovely. I don't think that that's the way that it works. I think they have to go through and like individually splice out every little tiny thing, which is just, don't you know that some overpriced lawyer is just sitting there, typing away
and crazy. It's sad. And speaking of crazy and sad, Dana Loesch back in the thing, bringing Steve Scalise into a shooting situation.
Yeah.
I'm
This
struggling
is
with
what
this.
got me on trouble on Twitter today.
Yeah, I'm struggling with this whole thing with these people with the gun nuts. I mean, this Lauren Boebert has been someone that I actually now get up every day and I check what kind of insanity comes out of her mouth or out of her Twitter account. But I look at this Marjorie Taylor Greene, the video that came out of her harassing that Hogue kid. I look at gun nut Barbie. Just wow. I actually thought it.
I know.
And I said this the other day. I actually thought when women took over, and women attained power, that we would be a saner society, that we'd be nicer to each other, that things would get better. We'd be better organized. We'd have to watch our manners. No, we've gone way off the deep end.
Unfortunately, not all women are amazing. Just like not all men are amazing or bad. If you ever had to deal with Virginia Fox or Marsha Blackburn or what's her name, Michelle Bachmann, or Sarah Palin for that matter, sometimes there are people who are just a couple of fries short of a Happy Meal. And somehow, in the case of Georgia, the Marjorie Taylor Greene, she ended up not having an opponent and basically sailed to victory. I'm curious to see what will happen with Boebert in Colorado after her election, but she's pretty much humiliating the heck out of her state. But today I got into trouble on Twitter because I commented apparently quicker than I should have to Dana Loesch, which means you're higher up in the replies. And so everybody saw my tweet and then the nutters just went, rawr. But basically what happened is she took the this idea that Donald Trump led his supporters to not only an insurrection, but chanting "Hang Mike Pence" and looking to kill Nancy Pelosi. But Marjorie Taylor Greene also encouraged this idea of executing Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, I think John Kerry, and maybe a couple of other Democrats. But this idea of an elected official calling for an assassination or an execution is, in my opinion, a bad thing. And Dana Loesch sort of tweeted it out and said, that equated this with what happened with Steve Scalise whenever the Nutter dude came to the baseball field to shoot, a bunch of members that were on the baseball field. And the difference that I had to try and explain all day long to a lot of lovely people was that whenever an elected official calls for an assassination, it is different from a crazy nutter who is now behind bars, who just showed up and started firing the gun. One is in jail, one is in Congress. One called for an assassination, one just showed up out of the blue. And as you recall, whenever it happened, every single Democrat in the world denounced it.
Absolutely.
Marjorie Taylor Greene hasn't apologized. She's been blaming it on her social media team. She hasn't accepted responsibility. She hasn't apologized, and she hasn't expressed any kind of regret for it. So I'm just like, well, I mean, at the very least, Bernie Sanders got on the floor immediately and said, this is unacceptable. This is not okay. And I do not want my people to do this. I understand you're pissed at Donald Trump. I understand we're all having issues with our health care and, he's trying to take it down, but, this is not the way to do it.
Yeah,
violence is not okay.
As for Lauren Boebert, the only thing that she expressed regret in is that she didn't have her gun the day of the uprising, so she could shoot the people that she riled up, which is really weird to me. It shouldn't be, though. I mean, it shouldn't be, because
part of me kind of wishes that would, that's what happened, because that would have made a crazy situation, and then we wouldn't have Boebert anymore. She'd be in prison.
Yeah, but the thing is, now that I think about it, my gun nut friends, they don't really care. They just want to shoot somebody, and I think she's one of those people. I think she really just wants to pop a cap in somebody's behind.
It's really sad. I don't understand where that homicidal tendency comes from. Maybe it's just a lot of driving on the Beltway. I got nothing.
She's got a big tool. She just wants to use it. Just is what it is.
It's not always about the size of your tool.
That's what I hear. So now we're finding reports that Trump actually suppressed some of the terror warnings that were protecting white supremacists. Did we actually need this story? Because didn't we already know this?
We actually didn't have any confirmation of this. I think we all sort of assumed that this was going on, that there was probably something happening that we didn't know about. But basically, for the last year or so, the Department of Homeland Security was getting these alerts, basically saying, "Look, there's violent anti-government extremists that are gaining speed and power, and they're coming for us." And they were giving it to local law enforcement, thank God. But again, some of these local law enforcement were in on it. So what we learned this week is that at least the new Department of Homeland Security said, "Oh, hey, by the way, there are a whole bunch of crazy people coming for us again. We don't know when, we don't know how, we don't know where, but it's going to happen."
Right.
And what was terrifying is it also came out, and then probably 6 hours later, there was an interview that Vice did with a Trump supporter who basically confirmed it. And all he would say is something is coming.
No, I don't doubt it. They didn't just go quiet and say, "Oh, we gave up." They went deeper underground. They're planning their next conspiracy, and next time they won't come and film their own treason. Next time they'll have masks on. Next time they'll be better prepared, and that's when it's going to be dangerous. And I see that the Capitol Police are saying they want to put a barrier all around the Capitol now.
Yeah, which pisses me off.
Me too.
That is the most amazing building. And that, like, the fact that when I moved here, you could go lay out on the lawn and read a book of the U.S. Capitol. And it's just this amazing place, and this understanding of how our government came to be and who we are in this building. And to just sort of sit in the grass and look up at that majesty gives me this, excited American flutter thing. And now there's a fence around it. And it's like, this is why we can't have nice things.
That's why we can't have nice things. Crazy people. Then that's a perfect place to end this. Sarah, I appreciate the time as always. I hope you do well. I hope you don't get left holding the bag, and good luck on the day trading.
Thank you so much. Have an awesome weekend, and take care of yourself and each other.
You as well. Our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out her work. She does fantastic stuff there at Raw Story. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 19...
Today is Climate Day at the White House, and which means that today is Jobs Day at the White House.
Green News Report special coverage. President Biden launches historic government-wide climate action.
That historic action and our special coverage straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Let me be clear. We're not going to ban fracking.
Okay, Joe, you don't have to rub it in. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I know you've been waiting 20 years or so for this day. A very ambitious climate change agenda from the White House.
Oh, yes. Just 1 week into his presidency, President Joe Biden made good on his campaign promise to launch a whole-of-government approach to solving man-made climate change. On Wednesday, Biden unveiled a sweeping, historic climate action plan to create millions of jobs, set the nation on the path to 100% clean electricity by 2035, and reach net zero emissions by 2050 with a central focus on environmental justice.
So no carbon emissions from power generation by 2035 and carbon neutrality by 2050, right?
Oh, yes.
And how does that stack up against other nations and their targets around the world?
It puts the U.S. in line with what other nations, especially the Europeans, have already set.
So we're catching up.
Yes. In a speech at the White House, Biden listed the costs of repeated extreme weather disasters and deadly pollution and highlighted the jobs boom that will result from addressing the critical need to upgrade the nation's crumbling infrastructure for resilience.
It's a future of enormous hope and opportunity. It's about coming to the moment to deal with this maximum threat that's now facing us, climate change, with a greater sense of urgency. In my view, we've already waited too long to deal with this climate crisis. We can't wait any longer.
The Biden climate plan is seriously huge and historic, and it is in keeping with the speed and scope that climate scientists say is necessary to avoid catastrophic climate impact. It dwarfs the policies of the Obama administration. The executive orders and actions signed by Biden focus on both domestic and international climate action and environmental justice, helping frontline and marginalized communities affected by pollution and ensuring equity in federal infrastructure and clean energy investment. It begins the phase out of fossil fuels while addressing job losses in coal mining and oil producing regions. Now, this is a partial list. Biden imposed a moratorium on new oil and gas leases and permitting for public lands and waters. Biden did not ban fracking because he can't. Only an act of Congress can do that. He directed federal agencies to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies that they have control over and to stimulate permitting and deployment of clean energy. He asked Congress to finally phase out taxpayer subsidies for fossil fuels that have existed for more than a century. He boosts investment in advanced battery research and carbon capture. He directed the entire U.S. fleet of government vehicles to shift to all electric, which in turn he says will create 1 million auto worker jobs. He set up a White House task force to coordinate emissions reduction policies and ensure that 40% of federal climate investments go to creating jobs in marginalized communities. His order rebuilds the nation's federal science agencies and research offices. He implements measures to protect scientists and scientific integrity from the political interference that became epidemic during the Trump administration. He will establish a new modern-day climate conservation corps, modeled after the Depression-era Civilian Conservation Corps, to employ young people to build climate-resilient infrastructure. He set up a task force to create new investment in coal country and communities reliant on fossil fuel jobs to utilize the skills they already have where they live to clean up closed mines and abandoned oil and gas wells and build new clean energy projects.
And that is very important. He wants to give them jobs, new jobs, cleaning up the mess that we have made for the past I don't know how many decades.
Biden also labeled the climate crisis as a national security threat. Special International Climate Envoy, the former Secretary of State John Kerry, countered the corporate media's fixation on cost, noting we are already spending hundreds of billions of dollars a year on climate disasters.
So we're spending the money, folks. We're just not doing it smart. We're not doing it in the way that would actually sustain us for the long term.
Biden closed out his historic climate day with this.
Our plans are ambitious, but we are America. We're bold. We're unwavering in the pursuit of jobs and innovation, science and discovery. We can do this. We must do this, and we will do this.
We will see if we will do this. I just have a feeling that Republicans in Congress want to do none of it. For much more on all of this and the stories we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some good news, some legislation being put forth, a comprehensive paid leave for federal employees act. And look, this is where we got to start. You start with the federal employees, and then maybe the rest of us go, hey, we'd like that too, please. This new legislation that they have rolled out would give up to 12 weeks of paid family leave to federal employees who would be, I guess, would be covered under the Family Leave and Medical Act. Which I think is a good thing. I think it's something that we need to move forward on. And this is why it's good to have, a Democrat in charge of the Senate. It's why elections matter, because maybe we get some of this good stuff done. But so far, very happy with Joe Biden. Very happy with the direction so far, especially day one, firing the guy from the National Labor Relations Board. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, just how well Joe Biden has done in his first full week as president. I've asked Dave Cann to come talk with us. Dave is the Director of Field Services and Education for the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE. Dave, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So let me get your thoughts on the recent introduction of this Comprehensive Paid Leave Act. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's great to see not only the damage that was done by the outgoing administration begin to be undished, but building on top of that to try to create the type of treatment you'd want to see for employees in this country coming from the White House. I mean, I think one of the best ways to telegraph what labor policy ought to be for a president is to show the way that they're treating the employees in the federal workforce. And one of the ways that this administration is and the Congress that's supporting it are doing making meaningful efforts to establish a pro-worker agenda is by their treatment of the feds. And this is a really important, really meaningful sign that's not just symbolic, but it's going to make a real difference in people's lives.
Right. No, as I've been saying, the fact that they came out and said, look, in any contracting, there's got to be a $15 minimum wage with a whole bunch of other criteria to kind of raise the floor up. I've been saying I think that's a really great thing. And now this, a good thing. But he's also in the first week, rolled back some of the attacks, or at least I think he has some of the attacks that Donald Trump and the previous administration had done against federal workers. Can you tell me what some of those were?
Yeah, well, there've been a bunch of really important initiatives, including putting meaningful COVID protection for federal buildings, so that people have to maintain social distancing and more masking and stuff like that. I think what you're talking about is something that we're celebrating, a huge move that constitutes a sea change for federal employees, which is EO 14003, which does a number of different things. The first thing it does is, you might have heard about something called Schedule F that Trump put together near the end of his term, which took due process away for civil servants that the executive decided shouldn't be availed it, and sort of was an attempt to push things back to the spoil system, where anybody that was a Fed that they decided they wanted to subject to it would have their job be dependent upon political loyalty. A real step back from the sort of healthy democratic bureaucracy that we've had in the country for centuries.
Right.
That's gone.
Yeah, and so not going back to the good old days of patronage. We're not going to go back to that. Exactly. Is that what I'm getting?
Exactly. And then there were. I think you've had me on the show talk about this in the past, which I appreciate. There were 3 executive orders from Donald Trump that took real serious efforts to kill federal labor. And if I'm speaking candidly, they hobbled. They took away a lot of the power that we had. And what they said is we couldn't negotiate over just about anything. They attacked due process, and they made it so that folks that the union representatives weren't able to provide representation at the work site. And, that wound up getting embedded in almost every collective bargaining agreement we have. And unstitching that and telling agencies they need to rescind, revoke, and suspend all the actions taken pursuant of executive orders, which is what this new Biden EO does, is going to give us a lot of work to repair stuff and going to help us get back to being able to represent folks and having real union power in the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, the due process thing to me is extremely important. And, I tell people the number one reason that I think it's important to have a contract and why you want to join and form unions is that it does away with this at-will employment scenario where you can be fired for any reason at any time. And you can only, if you have a contract, it's a just cause scenario. There has to be a reason for you to be fired, and there has to be a process by which it happens, and those should be honored and respected, just like we take as citizens due process seriously. So should we with our livelihoods. So to see that coming back, I think, is a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last thing that tried for is just increasing the scope of things that can be negotiated. Under law, there's a category of topics that were at the election of the agency, at the election of the employer, they could bargain over or not. And Biden saying, you know what, just negotiate, just bargain with the union. Don't agree to stuff you don't want, but talk it out and come to agreements where you can, and don't hide the ball when it comes to topics that can be negotiated.
Right.
Really get to work. And so, it's going to be a good 4 years, I think, based on that. We're hoping to see more agencies on the dime move forward, but I think a lot of folks are waiting for additional guidance from OPM, which is sort of like HR for the federal government, to provide additional instructions on what to do. But in the meantime, unions are still, our contracts have been gutted. Folks are still frozen out of representation. So while we appreciate agencies wanting to make sure that they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's, we're trying to represent people in the middle of a pandemic. Most of whom, a great number of whom are still serving the public in the workplace, and we want to get rights back so we can get to work serving people.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that these last couple of years I think have shown how fragile our system can be. And I look at at your employees, I look at the federal employees who you don't have the right to strike. So you don't have that arrow in the quiver. And when there is a disagreement, you have to go to some kind of a mediation panel, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, this is a scenario where, you've got the Trump administration at the time who, controlled the agencies that you were working for. So they were negotiating on one side of the table against you. And then they controlled that the judge who was going to decide against you. So it was kind of like a firing squad that you had no chance of really winning during the Trump administration at all, I don't think.
No, I think we didn't, and I think your description of it is right. At one point, the chair of the panel actually told me, you want to agree to whatever the agency is giving you because you don't want us to get our hands on your contract. So everybody was everybody participating in the sort of kabuki theater that the Trump administration set up for negotiations and what was going on.
Yeah, so let me ask you this, because this isn't the kind of world that I think we want to live in, where every election cycle we have these wide, bizarre swings to the extreme. I mean, Biden right now is trying to put things back to somewhere where they were before Trump took over. But my fear is that we get a couple of years down the road, we get another Trump character in who swings it even further, and we end up in this kind of this weird kind of state where, you've basically got company unions that have no power for workers, but you get bludgeoned over the head with by the employer or the government. That's one of my big concerns.
I think that's a real concern to have. I think that one of the lessons that we've learned as a movement, as a labor movement over the past 60 years, is that when we rely on mechanisms in law for our power, our right to bargain, our ability to litigate, making sure we get a fair day in court, all of which we've seen imperiled. And we're not going to be able to fix the courts during this administration. The damage that's been done to our ability to get fair hearings in those venues has been damaged by, Mitch McConnell's releasing a glut of sort of Federalist Society attorneys into the courts. Our power is going to come from people in the street, from people engaging in direct action, not strikes in the federal sector, but strikes other places. People power, engaging in movement, applying pressure on their legislators with a united voice. The type of CIO movement engagement that made a difference in the past. And I think, we saw, again, during the Trump administration in deep red states, teachers strike, changing, that it's the power of working people standing together that's going to be the only bulwark, not just to protect the rights of working people, but I think ultimately lowercase d democracy.
Yeah.
So I think I'm glad to be talking with like-minded folks about this, because I think that organized labor is going to be ultimately the guardrail to keep this country safe.
No, I just saw a great tweet here a moment ago. They were talking about the GameStop situation and how how it's being viewed as you've got the people rising up against these bigwigs, and this person tweeted out, "Hey guys, if you like the idea of regular people banding together to fight the rich and powerful, then wait till you find out about this thing called unionizing." And I thought that was just a fantastic tweet, because if you really do want to fight back against the rich and powerful, you really want to make things better, this is the path. Right, what you brought up, that CIO level movement kind of organizing that we haven't seen in this country in my lifetime, I'm hoping begins to come back with a president in Joe Biden, who has said there's going to be a cabinet level working group to encourage unionizing again. That has never happened in my lifetime.
No, it's very exciting. It's I think we have an opportunity to create the type of labor movement we've been wanting to see. And one of the things that makes me comfortable in saying that is talking to the membership of AFG, the potential members of AFG, seeing that they're ready to begin putting in the work to making a movement.
Do you think we're in that moment? Because the day after, and I've told this story a couple of times. The day after the election, I went and I led a strike down in down a little bit south of where I'm at now. 55 workers went on strike against this big global behemoth, and they ended up over like 20 some days, 25 days or something, winning a very good contract. They got really good things out of their action. And look, they were across every political ideology spectrum, the whole 9 yards. But the one thing that they all agreed on, that the righteous fight was fighting this corporate greed and trying to win a little bit better for themselves. And I think if we can begin to frame this moment in those terms of how do we build a prosperous working class? How do we make sure that we return reward to work? And that thing I grew up believing, if you work hard and play by the rules, you get ahead. And unions are at the center of that. I think we got a good shot.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that, I think you put your finger on something when you said that it's people that are across the political spectrum that are realizing that they're getting a raw deal. And I think one of the things that has the potential to be a real uniting force when people are loggerheads over partisan issues, and with fair reason, is that labor has the ability and the responsibility to talk to every working person. And, to borrow the parlance of Occupy Wall Street, 99% of us are working people. And we shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking that that's not the case. We have an obligation to talk to people about the fact that if you feel like you're not getting a fair deal, there's a simple answer to that, and that answer is workplace-based and industry-based solidarity to change the terms and conditions of your employment.
No.
Because that's That's what's under the hood. That's how you fix it. And
you're absolutely right.
We all have access. We all have common cause.
But it comes back to, and this is where having those conversations with the people on the picket lines and with others, over the years that I've had, it's nice to say, hey, all we got to do is unionize. When you talk to people who have been through multiple organizing campaigns and have lived through employers, with captive audience meetings and with all the things that they get away with in the private sector, and I'm sure they do in the public sector as well. It's got to become easier. And that's why, I have hope for Joe Biden. And, the hope I had for Barack Obama that didn't come to fruition. But I have hope for Joe Biden that he's going to move in that direction. And look, the things that he's already done to help government employees, the things that he is doing to help try and raise the minimum wage, I think those are good, solid steps.
I think you're right. I think the thing that distinguishes it from Barack Obama is the moment. I'm originally from Chicago, and Barack Obama, when he was in the Illinois State Senate, used to hold a poker game, a bipartisan poker game. And what he was famous for was not playing most hands, but when he played a hand, he would go all in. And I think what happened when he was looking at the Employee Free Choice Act and the ACA, he said, I'm not going to go in on labor. I'm going to save my political capital for something else. But I think Joe Biden has already established the fact, and the cultural climate, the political climate, and the forgive me for saying this, the shift in class consciousness and the popularity of union issues across the country has made it so that it's something that's worth investing time and energy in from a political standpoint.
Yep. And
I think that it's going to ultimately drastically wind up changing the economic and political landscape of this country in a really positive, meaningful way.
No, I'm right there with you. Because I've said in the past, had we gotten something better than the Employee Free Choice Act, which Barack Obama promised me twice, had we got that, I don't think we get Trump. I think lives get better. The anger level tones down because, when people are struggling, when people are stressed over every other aspect of their lives, I think, the anger ramps up. When you make people's lives better, when there's, a chicken in every pot and a Chevy in every driveway, people are a little bit happier and less willing to storm a Capitol and try and hang the vice president.
I think that's right, and I think we haven't yet seen the type of marketing and explanation of the PRO Act that we did for the Employee Free Choice Act. And my suspicion is that once that begins to mount, we'll have a good sense as to whether or not we're going to be getting any legislative support for what I think is going to be a largely grassroots effort.
Yeah, and it goes back to the old FDR story. You want me to do it, you got to get out in the streets and make me do it. And this is what it's going to come down to, I think. And we'll see how it goes. Last question I've got for you, in looking at, obviously, the last couple of things President Biden has done, and all of the attacks that you guys are under. I guess it's kind of a stupid question, but how long is it going to take you to clean up the mess and get back to where you were just before Trump caused all this damage? Because it's kind of my thought is, how long is it going to take us to clean up the damage of, the woman yesterday clean up on aisle 45? How long is it going to clean up this mess?
I think I want to. It's a tough question because I don't want to be too tough on the Biden administration because they're doing all the right things. But I'll tell you, I'm negotiating with the VA right now, and they're telling us to go pound sand. The Social Security Administration is saying that they don't want to fix stuff. We're sitting down. The USCIS is saying they don't want to fix stuff. We're sitting down with these agencies and waiving this Biden executive order saying, we're supposed to get rid of these union-busting executive orders from Trump and fix our contracts. And they're telling us, we don't feel like we have to. So the administration is going to have to, I think, lean into the subordinate agencies to drive home what it is they say they mean in these executive orders. Because we're not even a week out yet, but so far we've seen a total and shocking disregard for the instructions that the president has given to all of the agencies below him.
And this is where hopefully that that cabinet level working group does put some of that muscle behind, and we move in the right direction. But like you said, just a weekend. But I'm this far into the week. I'm pretty happy with where we are. But Dave, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. Good talking with you.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Dave Cann, Director of Field Services and Education there with the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE. Good stuff. Let's take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1932. That was the day the first unemployment insurance law was established in the United States. It happened in Wisconsin. Governor Philip La Follette signed the Unemployment Compensation Act. La Follette had a reputation as a progressive leader. Under the new law, employers were required to contribute to a fund based on their payrolls. Many across Wisconsin were out of work due to the Great Depression, but not all workers were covered by the act. Farm workers, domestic workers, railroad workers, teachers, and loggers were among those excluded. Employers with less than 10 workers also did not have to participate. Due to the Great Depression, it took a while to build up enough money in the insurance pool to actually pay out benefits. California, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, Utah, and Washington soon followed Wisconsin's lead. Then, in 1935, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act into law. Part of this act was to encourage states to establish unemployment insurance systems for their workers. The first unemployment insurance benefit check went to Niles Rudd of Madison, Wisconsin on August 17, 1936. He was an out-of-work photo engraver. He received the maximum allowable benefit of $15. Today, unemployment insurance programs remain a federal-state partnership administered under state laws. That means each state has a different maximum dollar amount and length of time the benefits can be used. Recently, unemployment insurance protections have been rolled back in some states. Since 2011, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Kansas, Michigan, Missouri, and North and South Carolina have all cut the amount of time that people can receive unemployment benefits. In North Carolina, that length dropped from 26 weeks down to just 14.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I got to tell you, the idea that, the tweet I talked about earlier, if you like the idea of regular people banding together to fight the rich and powerful, then wait till you find out about this thing called unionizing. It's something I've been talking about for years now. If you really want to solve some of the problems that we have with mass inequality, this is where you go. And this is one of those things that I'll be honest, I've taken shots at the leftover. They have all of their causes and all of their ideas and all of their issues, and it's easy to become a cause head. And this is my thing; it's all I care about. This is that central thing that's common to all of them. If you want to talk about racial equality, or you want to talk about economic equality, you want to talk about women's rights, you want to talk about minority rights, any of this stuff, it all comes back down to the dollars and cents. It all comes back down to dignity and respect at work. It all comes back down to having some power in the workplace, which then translates into power in everything else. And it's a sense, and when I talk to some, back when I was doing some organizing, you would talk to non-union truck drivers, and they had no idea what it was like to have the power to say no. Or if you came out and your trailer didn't have the brakes adjusted, you just said, no, I'm not taking it. They didn't understand that. So for me, it's about the power that comes and that sense of power that you get internally. that I have the ability to stand up. So I'm hoping we get this. Hoping we get there. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where we're